du hub et des médias sociaux sur les call centers.
Good morning. So we'll start out today talking about web and social media's impact on contact centers. This is something that is a little bit on the newer side when it comes to contact centers, but definitely not brand new. We'll go ahead and jump right in here. So first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about the overview of contact centers technology journey, so kind of where it began and where it is now. You gave a much more in-depth analysis of this than what I'm going to go over today, but just to kind of reiterate a few things, we'll go over that. We'll discuss some key differences between multi-channel and cross-channel considerations. We'll get into some key customer expectations to get a little bit of an insight into what people are expecting out of contact centers today. Go through some of the risks that are associated with social media in particular, and then how you can mitigate against those risks. We'll look at some strategies for social media, how you can do some planning around putting your team together, how to train them, and so forth, just as kind of a high-level overview. Look at some cross-channel strategies, and then we'll finish up with some keys to success, hopefully set everybody on the right path of how you can be successful in implementing this. And obviously we'll have questions at the end. So first, again, very quick overview of contact center technology. Started out with phones, that they were call centers in the beginning. We didn't have to worry about all of these different channels. Fairly quickly thereafter, went into email, and as email started coming up in the early 90s, became more relevant a little bit later. Eventually, probably in mid-2000s, web chat came along, and that was an interesting one because phones were a lot more personal than email was. Email was a little bit more flexible in terms of how you could respond to it, because you didn't have to be answering it immediately. And web chat kind of bridged the gap, so there was some personal there, but you didn't have to necessarily answer it immediately. People were a little bit more forgiving there, maybe not quite so much today as they were at the beginning, but then we moved into some self-serve, web-based, knowledge-based service. So there's limitations to this. There's no real personal service here, but it does allow, especially when you get into more expert-level users, them to do their own research and serve themselves essentially through a platform. Forms is also something I threw in here. So it's web-based, but it's a very particular type of web-based help. And then we get into what we're mostly going to focus on today is going to be social media. So this, for a while, was very cutting edge. It's not so cutting edge anymore. People generally expect it now, especially for any of the bigger brands. And then just as a very cutting edge thing, we're actually looking at video agents now. So it's almost sort of going back to the beginning in a way where you have that one-on-one personal connection, but it's done through video. So you can get a better insight into, what is this person actually feeling right now? You're going to see it on their face, and you have that one-on-one connection, so you get a personal connection there. So particularly if you're dealing with very difficult situations, that can be helpful. Very quickly, I wanted to go over, we're dealing with multi-channel here, but there's a difference between multi-channel and cross-channel. So almost, essentially, if you're running a contact center instead of just a call center, so just real quickly, probably most everybody here is aware of this, but call centers specifically dedicated just to the phone side of the contact. you have some teams are only social media teams, it's all they do. Whereas other teams bring in information, contacts from all kinds of different sources, and they have to know, okay, now I'm going to address this through Twitter or through a phone or through an email that comes in or whatever, so it's multi-channel. But so we have contact centers, not just call centers that we're dealing with, and those need to be cross-channel. So, and what I mean by that is you need to be able to, we discussed this a little bit on the panel yesterday, you need to be able to, if a customer emails and then they call you later, you need to have access to that email so that you know what they've already contacted you about. Otherwise, the customer is having to give all the same information again. I emailed you the other day, I haven't heard back, whatever, and you need to bridge that gap so there's not frustration on the customer side there. So, and the good thing about this is you can start mapping this customer journey in a way, because you have data along all of these different points. And you can start mapping the customer journey in a way where you can see trends, you can find gaps in service if they exist, and so forth. So it's very important to not just have a multi-channel call center, contact center, but it needs to be cross-channel so that you can help trace that customer journey across every one of them. And you have to share that data across all of those touch points. It's important to understand what our customers expect. If we offer our service in a way that doesn't connect or doesn't meet the needs of our customers, then we're not helping them the way that they need to be helped, and they're not going to be happy. So in real estate, at least in the United States, probably all over the world, the motto is location, location, location. So whether you're going to be successful in real estate often very largely depends on where you put your real estate. When it comes to contact centers, the motto is consistency, consistency, consistency. So how you interact with your customers across all of your channels is extremely important. Every touch point needs to be immediate as it can be. Personalized, so they feel like you're dealing with them on a personal level. It's not just some other number that's coming in. And it should be proactive. So anytime that there's an opportunity where you can be proactive in that conversation, again, connecting that information. I see that you emailed the other day, you wanted information about a bill that you were having trouble with. Have you been able to resolve that or whatever? So you are proactive in that conversation. That tells them that you care about what's going on with them and helps you connect with them on a personal level. The service level across all of your different touch points is expected to be at the same level. Again, it's that consistency. And be aware that your customers consistently believe that technology enables them to take their business elsewhere very easily. So because we have technology at our fingertips in so many different ways, whether it's a laptop or a phone or desktop or whatever, it's very easy for us to connect with different companies. So if one company is not meeting my needs, it's very easy for me to go somewhere else. So we need to make sure that when we provide this service, it meets their needs and pleases them, because we can lose that customer very easy. Anybody who's on the sales side knows how difficult it is to get that customer in the first place, so you want to keep them on the service side to make sure that you don't lose that customer. It's very expensive to get new ones. Technology solutions should be simple, but not simplistic. They should be intuitive. So there's a difference between those two things. Simple means it's easy to use, it's intuitive, it makes sense to them. Simplistic means it's more like a toy in a way, right? And it doesn't really do what they need it to do. So we need to make sure that, again, I think I mentioned the comment from Steve Jobs yesterday, that it's incredibly difficult to make simple interfaces. Any product is easy. It's very easy to make a complex product. It's very it's very difficult to take a complex product and make it simple. So there is a lot of thought that has to go into that, but it's thought that we should be putting into it. Half of social media inquiries are done on mobile devices, so you have to be where your customers are. Every one of us here probably has a mobile device on you today, and that's fairly common all throughout, a large portion of the world. So, so we need to make sure that our solutions that we have, the way that we connect with our customers, are where they are, and not expect them necessarily to go to a website or whatever, but with a great big screen in front of them and so forth. Data privacy and trust are key aspects of customer loyalty. So when you have brands who have data breaches, immediately, in the U.S. we see stock prices drop. Almost immediately, happens very quickly. Now generally they'll recover, but it takes time, and that drop is something you want to avoid. In 2016, Salesforce had a report, State of the Connected Customer, and found one of the biggest gaps that existed between customer expectation and the business delivery, so what the customer expected and then what the business actually provided, are in personalized service, mobile experience, and predictive intelligence. So the customer actually wants you to sort of predict what their needs are, and that can be very difficult to do, certainly. And just real quickly, I'll run through a couple things here. In 2018, Salesforce's new report by the same name said 62% of customers say that they share a bad experience with others, which obviously isn't the greatest thing. 72% though said they actually share good experiences, which actually was sort of surprising to me. From what I see on reviews, a lot of times the reviews that I see are you would think that people want to post negative reviews more, but there's actually a lot of people who will post positive ones. 2/3 of customers will even pay a premium to companies who offer superior services and products, which is great news. So as you have upper management who may be a little bit skeptical of bringing in better technology and better tools to serve your customers, this is information that is excellent to show to them. Now obviously you need more than one little report to do that. Actually it's a fairly significant report, but there is definitely data out there that supports this. And then there was a time when just having a presence on social media would satisfy demands, but today customers actually, 59% of customers say that you need a cutting edge experience. So, there are brands that I deal with who have social media channels, Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, Pinterest, and so forth. But they don't monitor, they kind of just put them out there and they don't do a whole lot with them. I've reached out to some where it's taken me 8-10 hours to get a response back, and that's too long. Other ones, I get a response back in a half an hour or 15 minutes even. So having that channel isn't all you need. You actually need to have a cutting edge solution there that ensures that you're connecting with those people when they need you to connect with them. So there are definitely risks associated with social media. Probably we've heard about some of these. I know there have been some pretty big ones in the United States over the past few years. As I mentioned yesterday, there is a permanency to social interactions. So the mantra in the United States, once tweeted, never deleted. So once it's out there, it's impossible to take that back. And we even see things like, you have the Wayback Machine, if you're familiar with that, so it's, I think it's archive.org or something like that, where you can go and see past versions of websites that they take snapshots of. So once you have something out there on the web, it can be impossible to remove it. Sometimes it's a matter of even a few minutes. You post something, you realize it was not the right thing to post on Twitter, you go delete it, somebody's already taken a screen capture or shared it, and it's there. There's no going back from that. So placing the correct people in those roles is very important. Having peer reviews with supervisors for ongoing training is particularly with difficult scenarios is important as well, to make sure that you can do some role playing here. How would you handle this situation if this came up? What is your response to a customer who interacts in this particular manner? So making sure that you have that training in place and that it is ongoing so you continue to improve over time is very important. And then make sure your coaching on any core interactions is quick. You want to mitigate against this happening over and over again or 5 or 6 times in a row. Hopefully it happens once, if it happens at all, and then it's done. So as we said yesterday, if you're going to fail fast and recover extremely fast as well. There's definitely privacy concerns with anything on the web. On the web development side, we just went through a huge initiative with several of our clients where we set up GDPR compliance on all their websites and all that. So definitely a heavy focus on privacy right now, which is good. I think it's a good move. But we need to make sure that social channels have specific training for that as well. We need to limit what topics can be handled on social channels. We have PCI compliance for credit cards. You certainly do not want people sending credit card information over any social channels. Sounds crazy sometimes, but I've had people email me credit card information, which is not a good idea. I've had people do all kinds of crazy things like that. So make sure that the agents know where those boundaries are. In the United States, we have HIPAA compliance, which is health insurance related stuff. So when you have personal health information, you can't send that over certain channels. So that would definitely be one you wouldn't want to have going over social channels. Interactions that involve personal information should be redirected to channels that are appropriate. So if that starts to come up, if they have questions that you think, wait a minute, this actually looks like it might go down a path here where they're going to share some information in a public way, you should redirect them to somewhere that's private. And then ensure that there's a clear protocol in place for regularly monitoring these interactions to make sure that if there are things that are happening that shouldn't be happening over those channels, it's caught and it's corrected as quickly as possible. Hopefully it never happens, but can't guarantee that. There are possibilities. Sure.
We know in this case it's transforming negative attitude into positive attitude. What are the last strategies in the US to convert that?
To convert
the negative attitude or the negative comments into the positive.
So one of the biggest things, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but one of the biggest things that you want to make sure you do, you're going to have negative comments. It's going to happen. So one of the biggest mistakes that brands make is they don't address them at all. So then when people see those, they don't see anything going back. It looks like the brand doesn't care. And so what you want to do is make sure you have a response to them. There are going to be some that slip through. You can't monitor every single thing that exists on the internet, obviously. But if people start doing research about your product, they're going to see, okay, they're responding here at least to some of, a good amount of these, right? And then they start to see you stand behind your product, you support your customers when they need help, you give them additional tools, whether it's a phone number to call into or an email address, so that these people can contact you. So a lot of it isn't, again, when you have a brand that has 5-star reviews on everything and everything looks perfect, it looks fishy. It looks, it doesn't look real, right? So it looks like somebody's gaming the system. So having negative reviews isn't bad. It sounds weird, but yeah, making sure you manage that is what is key. Kind of similar with data breaches. So any of these social platforms, the major ones out there, are going to have their own very strong data privacy and security protocols in place. However, they still have data breaches. Huge companies have data breaches. Facebook has had data breaches. So what you want to make sure you do here, so if you are using these platforms, one of the risks is that you could be somewhat exposed to those data breaches. But remember, your customers are going to be using these platforms and mentioning your company anyway. So it's not like you can say, we're not going to get into that because we're afraid of this security issue, because your customers are going to be on it anyway. So then all you're doing is not going after those negative reviews, and you're just leaving them there, and then it looks like you don't care, and you're not managing it. So it's kind of catch-22 is what we call it in the United States. So it's kind of no matter what you do, there's a risk. So, first, generally speaking, these platforms have very strong security in place, but nothing is unhackable. Very, very secure systems are still hackable. So the best thing you want to do there is make sure that you proactively have a remediation plan in place, so that if there is a data breach, you already have some PR language, maybe you have a strategy behind this for managing that once it happens. I would definitely plan for it beforehand, because what you come up with on the spot oftentimes is not the best way to handle that. Another thing you can do is make sure you have corporate accounts for each social channel, in that you can use tools like TweetDeck for Twitter, for example, where you can manage everything in one place. Each customer service agent should have their own account with their own password. All accounts should use strong passwords. It always makes me laugh and cringe at the same time when we have clients who email us passwords or send us, we normally don't have them email them to us, but through a secure channel, and they send us these passwords and they think it's very secure, and it's horrible, and it happens all the time. So make sure you enforce strong passwords. Don't share passwords across different accounts. And we highly suggest you use some type of a password manager. So LastPass, internally we use KeyPass. That's probably because we're kind of tech geeks, if you will. But LastPass is a little bit more of a common one to use. And then we would also suggest that any internal systems that you use, and even external ones, if you're hosted on Azure or Amazon or any of the cloud services, that you have penetration and testing done on those systems on a fairly regular basis to ensure that you don't have any holes or vulnerabilities there, so you can patch those. So we'll get into some social strategies and considerations now. So one of the things that you want to do is begin by auditing your current social accounts and mentions for key activity. So if you have social channels and you're not really paying much attention to them, they're just kind of out there, or even if you are paying attention to them and you have some strategies behind them already, one of the things that you want to do is start auditing them. So search for mentions. So a mention is anytime, like on Twitter, you use a hashtag. On Facebook, you do an @ symbol and then put the name of the brand or whatever. So each platform has its different way of doing that. So you check for those, and then once you do that, you see the results and you start to get an idea of, okay, maybe people aren't using this platform. So do we even have any mentions? If we do, are they negative? Are they positive? Are they just people who are mentioning our brand together, or are they trying, one person to another person? Or are they actually trying to reach out for help and maybe we're not catching those? So do an audit first. This helps you establish a baseline for where you are today, so that then as you move forward, so you do an audit, you capture all of these different metrics, you record all of that, and then as you move forward and you implement your new strategies, then you have a baseline to compare. Are we doing better now? What are our metrics? Did we make a mistake and we need to recover from it quickly, and so forth. And then look for gaps that could be filled. So you may have social channels there that, let's say you have Instagram, an account, and you're not really monitoring that one very much, but you should be. So you may find a gap there that you can then work to fill with a new strategy. You should also identify the appropriate channels for each brand individually. So if you work with several different brands, each one of them may have different social channels that are relevant to them. And that also helps you not just figure out which ones to to be monitoring, but which ones also to put more monitoring on. So how you allocate your budgets and so forth. You may have more activity on Twitter, so you need a bigger team to monitor that than Facebook or whatever else. And don't forget online marketplaces like Amazon, Newegg, other ones like that, where you might have reviews that are posted. Again, it totally depends on what kind of product you have or service you have, which ones are relevant there. The rest of that we've kind of already talked about. And then another thing you can do is consider turning your customer service interactions into opportunities to further brand awareness. So while you have this customer on the phone or in a chat or wherever you are, is there another way to engage this customer with a brand while you have their attention? So here is where you have cross-selling, upselling. Is there any other way you can serve that person while you have them to gain brand loyalty, to turn maybe a negative review into a positive review? And I've seen reviews online that'll say, this was horrible, and then they'll have an update that says, after I dealt with customer service on this, I got my new product, everything's great, and I changed this from a 1 to a 5 or 4 or whatever else. So you can make some inroads there to helping your clients, your customers get better attitudes to your products over time. Training, one of the nice things about social strategies, social networks, is training is usually fairly minimal. A lot of the reason for that is because a lot of people already have social accounts. So we're used to interacting on our own personal time on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever else. So training people there isn't difficult because they're already familiar with the platforms. What you really need to train them on is the specific platform that you're using then to manage it. So if you're using TweetDeck or something like that, how to manage within that particular platform. So with all these channels in place, now how do they all work together so that you have a seamless customer experience? And how do we gain insight into the overall customer journey? First of all, you want to look at your technology stack. This is where you would probably bring your IT team in, research and identify what technology is appropriate for the particular solutions you need. Create an implementation plan. This might need to be phased depending on where you are, where you want to get. But don't be afraid to start. And small steps are better than no steps, so move forward in some way. And then build appropriate integrations between systems. This is really important. Anwar and I were talking yesterday with another group about having a data warehouse where you bring all of this data together in one place so you can report on it and get cross-channel reporting. Does limited good if you have all of these different chunks of data that are disconnected, especially if you have to somehow manually pull that together. You put so much time into that. So instead, pulling the data out of these different systems and putting it into one central location so you can provide cross-channel reporting can be incredibly beneficial. Make sure that you measure the correct metrics. So again, try to establish baselines. And that's just the beginning point. Where are we today? So that as we make changes, we'll know whether we're making positive or negative impacts there. This also helps you to identify key points of interest in the customer journey, how they transition between one channel and another. So from email to chat, from chat to phone, and so forth. And then you determine how to measure these experiences. How important is this data? Is there some way to incentivize customers to get their feedback so you get a little bit of a window into what they're thinking, feeling, experiencing as they go through these different things, different channels? And then certain information obviously can come in through the channels themselves, right? So you can, depending on, so web chat, you may be able to track how much time it took to respond. There's nothing you have to get from the customer there. It's just inherently coming through the system. And then, again, make sure that you can do reporting across all of these different channels. I think I just shot a laser at somebody. Data is incredibly important, but if you have bad data that goes in, you have bad data that comes out. So worthless data ends up leading to meaningless insights. They're not insights at all. What it ends up doing is taking you down a path that is the wrong path to go down, and you might not even know. So make sure that your data has, you have good data integrity, you're measuring the right things. So my background is in research psychology on the human factors side, and one of the things that we learned very quickly was you can make a study come out and say basically anything that you want. You have to be very careful how you control your data, how you measure it, and then how you then make conclusions based on that data. You have to be very careful of essentially what you need to do is use the scientific method the way that it's supposed to be used. So you have a question, you create a hypothesis, you then do research, and then you do reporting off of that. If you do ad hoc analyses, you often can you end up getting your own biases within your results. So you end up proving what you wanted to prove because it's what you wanted to prove. So be careful on that. Remember that correlation does not equal causation. So you have to, when you're testing things, if you're testing things in a less scientific way, you're looking more for trends, not exact data points. When you're doing things in a very scientific way, your data points are going to be more accurate. Again, I come from psychology on that side, so it's a soft science. We make estimations. It's not something like physics, where everything generally is very precise, except for on the theoretical side. So just be careful with those. The other thing to remember, which is extremely important whenever you're doing research, when you are looking at changing something to see how it affects your results, change one thing at a time. Anytime you change two things or more, you have no idea which one was the one that actually resulted in caused the result that happened. Keys to success. So again, be where your customers expect you to be. Yesterday I gave a workshop on understanding your customers and how to implement the right technology for your customers based on your customer persona type and their customer journey map. So know your customers, and that will help you to know where they are, what channels they're coming in at, which ones they prefer, and so forth. Ensure communication across all channels is consistent. Again, consistency, consistency, consistency. Ensure your level of your service level across all channels is consistent as well. Again, consistency is key to this. I'm going to keep hammering that home. Offer solutions and systems that are intuitive and easy to use. Again, we're not looking for simplistic, but simple things that are easy to use. It's iPhone. You know, I'm actually not much of an Apple fan, probably contrary to lots of people here. But certain things that Apple does are brilliant. I have AirPods, and I love them. They work excellent. And they've been able to solve certain issues and make very complex things very simple, and they've done that very well. Be proactive with your security protocols. You don't want to have to react to a situation after it happens. You want to try and predict that situation so that when it happens, you already have those things in place and it's rolled out nice and quickly. It's smooth. You don't have to roll it out, backtrack, figure out how to reword it because you messed up, and then at that point you failed twice. So try and mitigate against that. Use the right technology stack. There's a whole talk that could be given on that one thing. I'm wrapping up a whole bunch of things in one little line there. Integrate systems so that they work seamlessly together. And these last two kind of go together. Use the data appropriately. Make sure you establish baselines at the beginning, otherwise you don't know whether you've just improved or not, gone the opposite direction. So I think that's it. Do we have any questions? We have
Thank you. Experience. Do you have any figures of the ratio by channels? For regarding the phone or the web or the social media?
Duration?
No, ratio, it means some figures of use.
Oh.
The second question, what will impact the use of the channel? Is it the business that we serve or the experience of the customers?
I don't know if you know anything on the first one. I can answer the second one. The second one is, there's some generalities there. Ultimately, it's going to depend on your particular audience, right? So who uses what? It's not, there are some generalities that you can make there, but this is where the research is key. Okay, so in this will depend on each brand individually, essentially. There may be some generalities you can make. For example, in general, your younger generation is going to prefer those things that are web-based of some sort, apps, the web, chat, and so forth. Your older generations are generally going to prefer things that are related to a more personal interaction, so anything, phones, those types of things. So that's sort of probably doesn't even need to be said because we sort of already know that. Apart from that, though, it really does depend on your particular channel and or your particular brand and situation. So what we do there is we go in and we say, okay, we conduct studies there and see you develop user personas, you do customer surveys, you can do contextual inquiries, things like that to actually gather that data, because it will vary widely across different companies.
I think to the same token, to this question that you're answering, is the companies and the business processes that they have. So sometimes, even though they want to be in, let's say, the digital channel, their processes or their infrastructure is not ready. So they have to work their journey out. In the United States, the issue that they have today, they've been dealing with it for the last 10 years, is they built their whole processes and their whole infrastructure around non-digital channels because they didn't foresee that one day is going to be a Facebook, right? And these digital channels. So they focus mainly on pretty much the call center and automating the call center. And then this digital channel came in and took them by surprise, frankly. Because they were sitting there like, oh, well, it's here. This too shall pass, it's not going to happen. And then actually, the young generation started saying, no, I don't want to call you. I don't want to come and see you. I want to text you. I want to just go online. I want to go to Facebook. So now they've been reacting to that and changing. Now, if you think about you build something over the last 20, 30 years, and you try to change it overnight, it's hard for like big companies. Now, small ones, startup that are starting, they can go directly to those channels. The big ones, it's a big ship, and they're really hard to kind of steer it. Think about a big boat. If you want to turn it around, you cannot just turn it around quickly, you have to turn it slowly. So to your point about your first question on the ratios, depends on your business. Some businesses, like I say, that are small startups or they're just starting as a company, they would have a high percentage in the digital and less in the phone channel. If you take big banks, big companies, they still have call centers, and they are starting to go to the digital. So I cannot tell, I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you that the phone channel is still pervasive, but they've been seeing a big increase in digital just because the customers are forcing. So I'm sure we can find some information if you're specifically for industry, but in general, it's probably going to be you have to do it by industry. But there is some data out there. I just don't want to quote something and it's wrong.
Bonjour. Les technologies multicanales génèrent beaucoup d'informations sur les clients. Donc, ma question, c'est comment structurer toutes ces données. comment les structurer afin de faire des analyses et construire des projections, des prévisions.
Okay, let me translate first. So you said the different channels, all these different channels, they generate a lot of information, a lot of data. And so how do you structure your data through all of these channels to be able to actually do a meaningful analysis? Let's see if she has the same questions.
Merci. Donc, dans le même contexte, effectivement, à travers les réseaux sociaux, il y a beaucoup d'informations, il faut les structurer. Moi, je voudrais aussi parler de la fiabilité. Parfois, on a des informations qui viennent à travers les réseaux sociaux et des réclamations. Parfois, c'est très difficile d'identifier le client et de s'assurer réellement que les informations sont fondées, sont fiables. Et donc, pour pouvoir en faire un retour, vraiment répondre à, surtout quand c'est un domaine sensible, bancaire, ou si l'information concerne son compte ou autre chose, c'est vraiment très difficile parfois l'échange à travers les réseaux sociaux est sensible.
So what you were saying is in the same context, sometimes when you get information through social media and it's anonymous or it's sensitive information, especially in banking. Yeah. So how do you deal with that? How do you make sure that it's actually real, the issue is real, and also how would you exchange in such that situation if it's a secure account and everything? How do you do it?
So I'll answer the last. They're definitely related. So I'll answer part of the last question first. Training is probably going to be a big part of how you deal with a security issue because you can't take certain information over public channels, right? So a lot of that is going to be, okay, you're dealing with this customer, they start going down this path where they're getting ready to, or hopefully haven't yet, but they're about ready to give you some information they probably shouldn't over that channel. Immediately the agent at that point in time should redirect that into a channel that is more appropriate. So whether that's a call or whatever. And the thing that's important there too is that transition needs to be easy and seamless. It can't be, well, just get off of this web chat and now go over here and call this phone number. There needs to be some kind of a transition there that's easier for them to do. There's one solution that I was looking into here recently where they have, they call it a visual IVR, where you have kind of everything together, and it makes going from one channel to the other a lot more seamless than it normally would be. So there are solutions there that can help with that, but you do need to redirect that somewhere else because otherwise you're in a bad situation. Yeah, I mean you're putting sensitive data over channels that it shouldn't be. So on the data side of it, that one is something that can be very tricky, right? Obviously, it's a great question. So there is, first of all, I would bring us back to data is to be used as a guide. There oftentimes is no perfect way to do it. So what you're trying to do is get insight out of that data that will lead you into a direction. Not, this is perfect data, that everything lines up perfectly, and therefore I can make these predictions based off of that. So a lot of this that's why it's kind of, there's hard science to it, there's statistics and everything, but there's a lot of judgment in there as well, where you have to make right judgment calls with how you, what data you want to track, because you can track anything. And I would also say this, don't overcomplicate your data. Because if you start taking, you could track everything, right? We actually have websites that end up being too overwhelming because we have too much information coming in, and there's a point to where there is almost too much data. I can maybe even put that slightly different way too. You can collect all the data you want. Be careful about what data you actually pay attention to. Okay, so you may collect 1,000 different data points, right, across all of your different channels. But you really only need to pull out maybe 10 or 20 of those possibly. Or maybe you start with something smaller. So start simple and then build from there as you get a really good understanding of this particular data set that you're looking at. And you know, this data right here is very accurate. We can make good predictions based on this. You've done it over a year or 2 or 6 months or whatever, so you know what those trends mean and you can track that. And then over time, you can add additional things on there and you can start making your decisions a little bit more, the data that you use to make your decisions a little bit more complex. So part of my answer is going to depend on where you are now. Right, so if you're already doing a lot of this and you already have complex data coming in, you're already using that and you're analyzing that now, that's different than if you're just starting out. So if you start out, you do want to start out simple. What I would say is we would say you want to crawl before you walk, before you run. So start simple. Then as you can build up over time, build up over time. I don't know if that helps.
Probably want to add up a little bit to what I think you're looking for too is how to capture the data, right? So want to figure out how to go about putting it in a formal way so you can search it, report on it, and so on.
C'est-à-dire comment déjà, bon, ça génère, il y a sûrement une collecte structurée, c'est-à-dire qu'il y aura, il faut les mettre dans un endroit, les stocker, et qu'il y ait une corrélation avec, par exemple, dans notre cas, sur mon opérateur téléphonique mobile, si on lance des nouveaux services, donc il faut qu'il y ait une corrélation avec les coûts de clients et le phénomène du réseau. Et on construit. C'est-à-dire qu'on a ces deux données et on construit pour que ça va nous permettre de déjà être avant-gardiste sur la construction et les investissements du réseau. Ça, c'est un exemple.
Je vais répondre en anglais parce que ce sera plus facile pour être plus rapide. What you want to do is basically capture the data, right? Put it in a system. So typically you want to use the same system that you've been using for your other channels, right? So CRM is a great tool for that, right? So when your agent, teleconseiller, is actually looking at the data on Twitter, let's say for example, and there is a post on your company, right? You want to capture that, right? So you can do it manually and the agent can just put all the information, it's a contact, right? Put all the information in a CRM system if you have it, right? Now, obviously, there are a lot of tweets. You can have thousands of tweets. You may not see all of them, right? But some of these platforms, like Twitter or Facebook, they have, it's a little bit technical, right? They have what's called open APIs. And what that gives you like a programmatic way to actually access that data, right? So what you do, you have to build with your les informaticiens, you have to build these programs, right? That would go and capture the data. So for example, there's a hashtag that says, Mobilis or Algérie Telecom, right? You want to go and grab all that data and then process it and say, okay, what needs to be looked at, what needs to be filter a little bit of information, so then you can start, just focusing. And at the same time, now you have the data in your own database, right? And you can write reports, how many people, you can figure out how many people have actually contacted me directly, and so on. And that way you can basically centralize it, and now you have another channel. You have the data for your tweets, for your Facebook mentions.
Quand vous dites le service IT, donc ça nécessite d'autres développements.
Ça nécessite d'autres développements parce qu'il y a deux sources pour l'information. Enfin, il y a une seule source, mais il y a deux façons d'accéder à l'information. Donc il y a la source manuelle, c'est-à-dire c'est l'agence, le téléconseiller qui est en train de voir, et donc manuellement ils doivent capturer l'information. Mais ça va pas couvrir tous les tweets et toutes les interactions qui existent. Et il y a une manière un peu plus formelle, un peu plus directe. C'est-à-dire qu'on a accès programmatiquement directement à l'information à travers c'est des fonctions informatiques qui sont disponibles, qui sont ouvertes, et on peut directement y aller et extraire l'information.
I think the question you were also asking is if they're going to update their system, and now
they want to be able to see in a tweet that it's slow, that they want to get all the information the initiative that they're doing. So how do you prepare the data and information to see what you're doing is good or not?
Beaucoup de clients ont une corrélation directe avec ce qui se passe. Donc, si nous on investit sur par exemple on lance des services, après on essaie d'écouter le client et on essaie de voir le phénomène. Est-ce que c'est ta réponse à répondre?
Sur le principe, c'est la même idée. C'est-à-dire que vous allez en fait, vous allez définir ce que vous allez chercher sur Twitter ou sur Facebook. Et donc c'est une recherche
manuelle.
Si vous faites manuel, ça va être un peu difficile parce que vous n'allez pas tout voir. Mais si vous faites du programmatique, c'est de manière systématique, vous allez capturer toute l'information. Et vous allez voir que vous allez essayer de définir, par exemple, vous accédez à un tweet.
C'est-à-dire interpréter
Donc, la clé, c'est l'interprétation. Parce que vous avez accès à l'information. Dans l'interprétation, est-ce que c'est un tweet qui est positif ou est-ce que c'est un tweet qui est négatif? Donc, il y a une certaine interprétation. Vous pouvez essayer d'automatiser ça. Et c'est là où l'intelligence artificielle joue un certain rôle pour essayer de définir quel type d'interaction. Et disons que vous arrivez au point, ça c'est, on va s'indiquer, c'est positif, c'est négatif. Donc vous pouvez voir en temps réel comment est-ce que la fluctuation des positifs et des négatifs, quelle effet ça va avoir sur votre.
Pour montrer le nouveau service, vous pouvez automatiquement aller à Twitter, get all the information, and then look for a new service launched yesterday. And if you start getting next to the model, ça peut se faire. Réagir rapidement. Les informaticiens. Any other questions?
Excusez-moi, je ne pas parler plus fort. Le souci aussi, effectivement, là, on récupère toutes ces données, que ce soit manuellement ou autrement, et ça permet d'avoir une visibilité, ça permet d'avoir un aperçu sur la vie des clients réels à travers donc leurs remarques. Le souci, c'est de répondre aussi à ces clients. Parce que tout à l'heure, j'avais noté que le collègue qui avait le intervenant précédent avait dit il faut répondre aux questions pour montrer que l'entreprise est là et réagit aux questions des clients. C'est vrai qu'il ne faut pas tourner le dos aux clients, il faut répondre. Mais parfois la difficulté c'est ça, c'est de pouvoir répondre déjà par rapport au nombre qui est parfois extrêmement important. Et aussi, je vous ai dit tout à l'heure aussi, c'est difficile aussi la fiabilité. Parfois on a des clients réels et effectivement leur souci est réel, il faut le prendre en charge. Mais parfois l'information c'est-à-dire leur souci, c'est difficile de bien identifier le client afin de bien le servir. Et parfois, le fait de répondre à cette question, c'est vrai que la remarque c'était de l'orienter vers notre canal, mais le fait de l'inviter, de se présenter physiquement vers un établissement, là aussi, c'est-à-dire on ne règle pas un problème spontané, ce n'est pas une réponse directe, c'est très très difficile, parfois c'est les données transmises par le client. L'analyse de ces données, effectivement, peut nous orienter par rapport à la qualité de service qu'on offre, mais aussi c'est très dur aussi de... Merci.
I mean, you're right. Like I was saying earlier to the gentleman back there, it's, I speak in the US, I mean, don't expect them that they are actually solving all these problems. I mean, they're in the same boat like you. I mean, this whole thing about getting 1,000 tweets, right, from different individuals, they're not responding to all 1,000. I mean, unless you have an army of people to do that, and I think that's why they're having artificial intelligence, right, robots. to really do that. They're looking at that. I mean, because what you're saying is true. And then we're going through the same issues, same concerns. Is the quality of the data, is it real, is it a true customer? All of those things that we are going through the same thing. And I wish I can offer you an answer that's been solved, but I think we're all going through the same thing because all of this is pretty new for everyone, even the US. But the beauty on the flip side about this information, when you think about the call center, right? Every interaction is recorded, but you don't see it, right? You have to go and listen to it to find out what's going on. Or what we used to do, we used to have customer listening posts in call centers where we told our employees, for example, if you start hearing something 2 or 3 times today, please let us know. So we get our employees to tell us, it looks like I heard these things 3 times today. And then another employee say it again. But by the time we get it, it's like 2 or 3 hours or 5 hours late. And by the time we react to it, it's already too late because the customers are already telling us about it and we're not there. But with this information, if you have the right tools to go in and grab it real time, and it's actually Twitter and Facebook and all that, they have it available for you to pick up, then you can react to it quickly. And that's the beauty, right? Now, whether you're equipped physically to deal with it, with the right number of people, that's a different story. And everybody's struggling with that. I mean, the customer has become more powerful in the last 5 years, 10 years than it's ever been before. And we as companies are struggling.
Well, this is also one of the areas where artificial intelligence comes into play as well. So, and again, that whole topic is very complex, but there are definitely inroads that we're making in terms of how you analyze text and how you even trying to get into the feelings and attitudes of people based on what they're saying, which those are very complex things to analyze and to make determinations from. So, but we are actually making some inroads there. You know, having fake customer reviews and comments like that's something that we come across on a regular basis. How do you determine what's authentic and what's fake? It's a huge problem. I mean, it is something that I don't think anybody has really solved 100% at all yet.
I would thank you, Jared, and then we're going to have to go to the next topic. You have a question? I think we need to go to the next topic. Last question.
S'il vous plaît, sur le chat et sur le service web, on a ce qu'on appelle la réponse automatique, des réponses automatiques. C'est-à-dire, par exemple, le client demande une information, par exemple, dans notre cas, par exemple, un crédit, d'investissement ou un crédit d'exploitation. Est-ce qu'on doit favoriser ces messages automatiques que le client, ou on doit personnaliser, c'est-à-dire avec chaque client? Exactement.
I think generally, you know, there are certain things that you can have canned responses for and certain things you can't. So when you get a new response that comes in on chat, and so certain things you can respond to automatically and certain things you can't. If you have a chat that comes in and your first thing to do is send an automated response that says, you know, hey, my name is Jerritte, and I'm here to help you. What do you need help with today? That's a very easy thing to do in a canned way. And the nice thing about that is it can be canned. It can actually be somewhat personal in a way, but it can also be very quick. Now the trick to that is once you then get to the next one, once the customer does respond, that next one probably has to be something that somebody's actually manning and getting back to on a personal level, and it has to be fairly quick. So, and there can even be some timing in there that you play around with. So when they first contact you, if your canned response is essentially immediate, first of all, it's probably going to look fake because you can't type that fast. they probably don't expect you to have somebody there immediately. So what is the timing on that is more natural? So there's some judgments that you have to make there. And then, but once you do that and they respond, you have to have somebody who is ready and available fairly shortly thereafter. Yeah. And email is probably one that it depends to some extent, but it's probably one that you are going to need to have more of a personal interaction with, because the trick with email, again, if it's, we've received your ticket and we're putting a person on it, that's something you can send out canned. Once you go beyond that, you actually start interacting, where they're actually asking you a specific question, you have to have somebody manning that.
All right, thank you.